Welcome to Psyber-Conversations, the show where it's okay to agree to disagree. Today we are continuing our conversation on Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I'm Josh. I'm joined today by Bob, Heather, and Matthew, and we're picking it up right where we left off last week. If you haven't already done so, please hit like and subscribe and enjoy the show. But he was often a good guy, and in a twist, this time he's a bad guy. And I mean, you mentioned Once Upon a Time in the West. That wasn't Robert Redford, it was Henry Fonda, but it's a similar thing that I really love about that movie. Henry Fonda was always a good guy. And part of it was because he had these bright blue eyes that women would swoon over. He was Harrison Ford before Harrison Ford was born. And then in this movie, in Once Upon a Time in the West, he was not just a bad guy, but like a really horrible, awful bad guy that you can't wait to see die. And it was, a very pronounced acting against type. And that's kind of what they did here with Robert Redford, too. I love it when actors get to work against their type, when it works. Harrison Ford did that, too, and it didn't really work as well because What Lies Beneath was a terrible movie. But it was great to see Harrison Ford as a bad guy, because he's always a good guy. And now let's talk about Captain America.
Now back to Captain. Well, I mean, I think it's important, though, to talk about, because this is one of those movies where it's like, definitively, you could see the impact that other movies, books, not necessarily in this case, but you can see that was really the influence here in putting this movie together. And we've seen it in so many other movies where it's like, oh, that's just this. But then this one, they did such a great job of keeping it as, it's definitely a Marvel movie, but it's, it wasn't like super blatant in your face. This is a really poor example of what I'm talking about. It's a really bad example, so don't mock me for it, but it's Barbed Wire with Pamela Anderson. Okay. The only reason I bring that up, it is 110% the exact plot of Casablanca. Like 100, like almost shot for shot. They just set it in like the future time. And it's like this,
put more action in it. Casablanca is
not
exactly an action
that
movie.
It's like, it's like, oh my gosh, this is just this. That I didn't feel that way in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I mean, I can see the influence of these older movies and that style of movie and book and that type of thing, but I think they just did a really good job of making that their own, and making it a part of
like
a Marvel
updating
movie.
it.
I think that's
right.
I think that's why Captain America: The Winter Soldier is in essence a very, it's the most grounded and one of the, now that we're far in the future here talking back about it, but it's very grounded in terms of its plot. And again, the political thriller aspect. I mean, they in the MCU, they have yet to make anything that's, good script, good characters, good, everything. The plot twists are great. I mean, they have yet to really match that with anything else that they've done.
I like Robert Redford as an actor. I think he's a really big name. I think phase 2, we talked about it already, is when actors who had been in other similar adjacent movies like The Winter Soldier
Going against cast. Yeah.
I mean, I think one of the ones that I think about a lot with Robert Redford, I just like the movies, All the President's Men, and he's in that, obviously, and he plays the good guy role. In this one, he's the bad guy. I just think it was a good switch for him, and you can kind of feel that he's slimy from the beginning of the movie. I don't know. When I watch this movie, he's slimy now, but his character gives off that vibe. And I know we were talking a little bit about the Renata scene and that that was straight up evil.
Yeah, it was a good way to show that he is a remorseless bad guy, but at the same time, I at the risk of sounding silly at the time, I felt really upset seeing the scene with Renata, even though it's effective, just because, I don't know, call me an old man, but the first time I saw it, I was like, this is a woman who is cleaning his kitchen, he's cleaning his house because she's probably supporting a family, simple, nice woman, and he shoots her 3 times because she walked into the kitchen and the Winter Soldier was there. And, maybe I'm overly sentimental. This is an action movie. I recognize that people die all the time in action movies, and you just kind of write them off and you don't think about the fact that the characters had families. But Renata's scene, maybe because she's an innocent and they explicitly show her death, but it hit me really hard.
She's an innocent and bystander that they gave a name to. And I think that maybe makes a difference that they, it's not just, one of the people in the way, this is somebody they named, even if it was just that brief moment. I don't know if anybody else got this from this movie, but even from the beginning, to me, this was the most violent to date of some of the fight scenes in the Marvel movies. I don't know. It was very brutal fight scenes,
Yeah, it's something that
I don't know if that's something that anybody else picked up on, but it was the action component, like the past ones. But I think the violence seemed to be amped up a little bit in this one.
Yeah, I think it's something that is easy to overlook because, including this movie, Marvel movies are not bloody. It's very rare that you see anything graphic in a Marvel movie. You don't see people bleeding. You don't see people with, even when people's arms have been cut off, you never see anything. There's not a drop of blood. But when you look at the amount of fighting and what's the right word? The visceral, close-up graphic shots of people being hit and punched or thrown into things or shot. Like, there is more of that in this movie than any of the movies prior to this. I think.
It wasn't just a an amount of volume. It was like, even from the first time somebody's thrown against a wall, it was just a much more violent throw against the wall.
You could see the impact of them against
I don't know.
The wall.
It was something that was, a little more vicious about the fight scenes in this movie in general.
Yeah.
I mean, even
I think that
even Nick Fury in the car with all those bullets, it was just a little more amped up from the other Marvel movies to date.
Right, but his arm was broken.
Yeah, but do you think that made it more thrilling and suspenseful rather than it gratuitous? Because I don't think it was gratuitous. I think that you look at all the fight scenes, it was much more grounded. It included the whole everyday people type of thing because it was that spy political thriller type of thing.
Well, because it was a spy political thriller type of movie, rather than what we had seen to date of a quote unquote superhero movie. It was a little less superhero, a little more into almost touching a different genre of movie that it just made it stand out to the prior Marvel movies to me, that it was a little more serious, a little more violent, a little more, heady, a little more about that espionage aspect of it.
Right.
Rather than there's a bad guy, we're going to kill the bad guy and yay, the good guys win. It was it was much more involved than that. And
it was much more close quarter, and you had to feel, put you one of the characters.
Like, arguably the scene in the Avengers when Coulson gets impaled through the back with the spear was more graphic, in that you saw blood and you saw that. Well, yeah, but right. I mean, like, you saw blood and you saw something impaling him. But this movie, it's constant, and even though there's no blood, you see people bashed, and you really see them hit things. You see, I'm trying to remember some of the scenes, just where when the Winter Soldier throws a punch, and you really get a close-up look of his metal arm hitting something.
Yeah, there was one point where Natasha was thrown against a car or something like that.
Yeah,
and just the violent motion.
She gets shot through the shoulder first. She gets shot through the shoulder first.
I forget whether this was before or after the shot, but yeah. Again, it was just something that struck me, even from the outside, even from the fight on the ship when they're trying to rescue the hostages.
So that being said, do you feel like this is some of the best? Because it was minimal CGI. Do you think this is some of the best hand-to-hand combat Marvel has done in terms of all the things they've done? Is this some of the better action scenes because it was just so realistic? Like, not just, you've got not just the Nick Fury being chased by all the cops, but you've got the other
elevator scene.
The elevator scene is huge because that was the defining. I mean, yeah, that's a whole.
Would anyone like to get off?
Yeah, that's a whole thing right there.
Yeah.
And but I mean, I think about when they're driving the car and they're being first chased by Bucky before he knows it's Bucky on the freeway, and you've got that scene, and you've got the camera angles, the way it was shot, and he's shooting off the freeway overpass down with the bus and all that other stuff. I mean, do you think that this is some of the better action choreographed scenes?
I think
the fight scenes and everything else.
I think that's part of why this is my favorite movie, is because the action, even though there's a lot of it, it's really brutal, but not in a way where it's not like I'm watching a horror movie and I'm just watching it to watch people get their face smashed in, but it's telling a good story that's about as original as you can get. There's a theory that every story that can be told has been told, and now it's just a matter of reworking them so that they're doing it in a different way than we expect. I don't know if that's true, but the fights are integral to this movie and make this movie much more exciting, maybe because of the brutality of the fights or the fast pace. Because I love the camera work in fight scenes too.
Yeah, and I think that made a difference. Coming to Heather's point, I think that made a difference of making it more visceral and everything else. I mean, this is the first Russo Brothers. This is the first time they basically came on board with Marvel. Then it was Civil War, and then Infinity War and Endgame, and obviously they're bringing it back for Doomsday and Secret Wars because obviously they know that's what the audience wants. Is their style.
Yeah, they do well on the action movie for sure.
Yeah.
So the action side of it. Yeah.
And I particularly love the camera work in that last fight between Cap and the Winter Soldier right before Captain America finds out who it is. When they're in the close combat and the Winter Soldier has a knife and Cap has a shield. And the camera is very quick, but still very clear on what's happening and who's hitting who. And of course, it culminates with that shot of the mask coming off and hitting the ground.
Right.
And then you see the back of the Winter Soldier, and he turns around so that you can see his face for the first time, and you see it at the same time that Cap does. Yeah, it was brilliant camera work.
Yeah, it was really well done.
I think the choreography on that knife fight is John Wick level. Those are the movies though that I think about when we're talking about these types of
the high action
scenes. The high action is it feels like the John Wick movie, and you feel the action and intensity in those movies similar to the Winter Soldier. I still think Iron Man 3 is more violent than this movie. I think people blowing up based on a genetic experiment is just a little bit more violent than shooting a car, but that's just me. And I also think Tony creating homemade hand grenades to kill people with is a little more violent than what we saw in this movie. But I do agree that you feel the impact. And that was a point I wanted to make earlier. Is this movie, aside from being the best Captain America movie, this is the movie you feel that he's the super soldier the most out of any other MCU movie, I would think. And I think with that camera work and how they shot, the action scenes is because he's a super soldier and they wanted you to feel that impact. But you don't really feel that in Captain America 1. And the Avengers.
Yeah, it feels a little more cartoon-like of a superhero in the earlier one. Yeah. And now he's he's a super soldier.
I think that if you took away his super soldier stuff, you'd still have the same movie in this case. You still have this political spy thriller and that type of thing. Sure. It pays off but the thing is it was really almost secondary. I mean, you talk about being a man out of time. with Captain America that gets brought up. But, you know, ultimately it's like he's not necessarily a man out of time, but he's also a man out of his element. I mean, it was like, I get a mission, I go on it. Now he's in this whole political component of it and intrigue. And it's like, what do I do? I mean, sure, being a super soldier helps, but ultimately that wasn't the thing that was gonna win this fight per se.
Right. No, that's not my point. My point was just that he is a super soldier, and visually, the visual storytelling in this movie shows that more. But piggybacking off of that point, that's why I said kind of at the top of the podcast, this feels like The Dark Knight, but for the MCU. If you take away Batman out of The Dark Knight, you still get an amazing criminal investigation movie. And the same thing for The Winter Soldier. If you take out Captain America, or if you just make him a regular secret agent, you still get a really good crime and espionage movie.
Yeah, yeah. The Dark Knight is a great examination on morality of people, and you know that whole scene with the two boats, and you know who's going to pull the trigger, and this is a great movie on the, you know, on the idea of
and it's,
you know, Big Brother and surveillance and
the freedom versus fear thing.
Yeah. So,
and that's like Spider-Man 1 as well. I mean, it's all about great power comes great responsibility. You take Spider-Man out of Spider-Man 1, you still get a movie about, you know,
morality.
Yeah.
So,
but this movie also feels very dark to me because in a way, it's very depressing. You know, even at the end of the movie, they've stopped the helicarriers, they've stopped Hydra, but still S.H.I.E.L.D. is gone, or for all intents and purposes gone.
Right.
You know,
pieces need to be picked up.
Nick Fury is going away indefinitely. We don't know when he's coming back, if at all. We can take heart in the fact that he's still alive. But you know, but I also appreciate, and Marvel is renowned for this. No matter how dark they get, they still work in little bits of humor. And one of the things I like so much about Phase 2 is how the humor knows its place and stays in its lane and never gets over the top.
With the exception of Guardians 1, but yeah.
Yeah, but Guardians 1, like that was the thing.
That was a brand new thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was the point of Guardians, kind of. And also it was a James Gunn movie. And he does that really well. I don't know that the Russo brothers could have done something like that. They could, but I don't know if they would do it as well. But this movie, and this is part of why I said before my favorite Thor movie is the first Thor movie, not Ragnarok. A lot of people think Ragnarok is the best Thor movie, and I understand why. It's a great movie, but it's a comedy first and a superhero movie second. The first Thor movie took Thor seriously, and they put in a little bit of humor to keep it, you know, keep a good amount of levity, but it wasn't a comedy movie. And this is the same thing. That scene, well, we've already talked about it, but I love the scene, the SUV chase with Nick Fury. But that's one of my favorite lines in the entire movie is when he's asking the car to do this and this, and this system is damaged. This system is broken. Well, what isn't broken? Air conditioning is fully functional.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, and it's interesting the way you say it, where like Thor Ragnarok was a comedy first, you know, and then superhero movie second. This one is definitely a political action thriller first, the superhero movie second. And I wonder if that's not necessarily the formula. I mean, he's still Captain America. He's still doing his super soldiery things because he's Captain America.
Right. And the bad guys are still, you know, some sort of, you know, elevated supernatural-ish kind of comic book characters, you know. So yeah, it's still superhero and supervillain territory. But yeah, you're right. It is, you know, the espionage movie first, and then the superhero was secondary.
Right. And then that allows you to focus more on characters and that type of thing, which I think the Russo brothers did in all the movies that they did. The same thing in Civil War. They really focused on the relationships and all that other stuff, and the whole, like, how everybody was kind of warring with themselves. Like, what should we do? Should we sign the accords? Should we not? And then you've got Infinity War, which was just all about the characters and everything that happened to them. And then Endgame, you know, the same thing. It's like, I think that focusing on the characters, you know, their superpowers or whatever they do kind of it's like that comes alongside, but it's like, we got this guy, he's been frozen. He's a super, or not a super soldier, but he was a military guy. And it's like, what do we do with him? And then, his powers or whatever, kind of go with him. And it's kind of the same type of thing. I did want to circle back to, because I think that, I know we kept glossing over it, Matthew, especially, you're like, there's things, but I think that the themes of the freedom versus safety, surveillance culture in general, I think that does make a difference. Preemptive justice. The question I had was, is this movie accidentally prophetic in terms of where it was back when it came out, or was it more historically aware of knowing where everything was going? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I was looking at
my hope. I'm sorry to interrupt. My hope is that it was somebody's imagination trying to come up with it. Please,
I was looking at. I mean, think about the time that this movie was probably written and released. Drones were a big thing. It was newer tech. And even the writers mentioned that they wanted to focus on drone surveillance and just drone technology. And I think that probably played a big part in it. And I mean, drone technology's only grown since this movie's been released. So I guess you could call it prophetic without it being intentional or accidental. I like the theme, the freedom versus safety. Obviously, Captain America is right in this movie. And I'm emphasizing this movie, that the freedom aspect is more important than being safe. And even Nick Fury was blind to the issues of having helicarriers in the sky at all times to take people out. And I think it's a good moral question. I mean, people always, and we can take this question out, but would you go back in time and stop baby Hitler if you could? It's like, well, knowing what he did, yes, but would you harm a baby? Because that's what these helicarriers are doing, is they're looking at everybody's historical data to predict their future and stop them. So I don't know. It's a really great what if type of question, and I think it makes for an entertaining plot device in this movie.
Yeah, because as Cap says, the punishment comes after the crime,
right? Or before the crime.
Wait, sorry.
The
punishment should come. Yeah, the punishment should come after the crime,
right?
But that that's the helicarriers were going to do it exactly the opposite. I do appreciate that when Captain America brought that up, the first thing Nick Fury did was go and talk to Alexander Pierce and said, we need to put it on hold.
Yeah, because I think there is, like, of course we want the perfect world. And, I'm sure there was some sincere sentiment there about, like, this is a way to do it, without considering the nefarious possible use of it. Like any historical thing that, this could be a really useful thing, except if it gets in the hands of the bad guys. So, and who is the good guy and who's the bad guy in that moment? Is it good to pursue that technology or whatever it might be, when it has the potential to do such harm in the wrong hands? So.
Yeah, I was looking at what came out in 2014. The first Apple Watch came out in 2014. There was also the Amazon Fire Stick launched in 2014, and 3D printing became a home thing in 2014, which is irrelevant in terms of I think in this.
I don't know. 3D printing is a great idea until somebody 3D prints a gun. So
you're right. Yeah. But I mean, you think of the smartwatch, the Fire Stick, and now we're just, we'd already had Netflix and stuff like that, but it's like, those are all, in essence, those are all surveillance. The amount of data that they can get through digital stuff just by what do you watch? How long do you watch it? What are you clicking through? All that stuff. It's like, that's all just data. The whole knowledge is power has never been more true.
Yeah. If we were basing, like future crime on people's Netflix history, how many women would be serial killers right now, because that's a very common one. Women love those serial killer shows and true crime and
my wife
and
is
things
one
like
of those.
that. Like,
Well,
I mean, does like that, that territory right there, just thinking of that as the means of deciding, whether somebody would be a criminal, like, yeah.
Yeah, because we
Yeah,
could be
I
heading
think it's
to
crazy.
we could be heading to a world where people will start to say, "Oh, well, those students there, they're activists. We don't like. Let's wipe them off the map."
Well, except that we have a movie like, Captain America Winter Soldier to raise those questions and make people think about it. Like,
I'm worried.
Persecuting people before the crime is not the best approach.
Yeah, but they don't always fall. Sometimes they fall on deaf ears, because The Dark Knight, since you mentioned that earlier, Matthew did. In that movie, they talk about surveillance and how too much surveillance is unethical, but we're still doing it. So
yeah.
I don't know.
Acting on it,
In a few years,
making decisions based on it is where you get into dangerous territory, more so than the surveillance. I mean, like, we all, have given up certain level of privacy in terms of, our Netflix history, or, the Apple Watches in the world. And,
your
we've
social
accepted,
media and all that
we've
other stuff.
accepted a level of, like, stuff about us is out there in the world, and there's, we're still okay. But yeah, it's when people start to take action on that kind of stuff that.
I was reading about Minority Report, because that's the one I keep thinking of, right? The whole precogs and everything else.
Yes.
If you guys haven't seen Minority Report,
I've seen it, but I don't remember it very well.
So Minority Report is it's a pre-crime thing, right? But that movie came out in 2002, but it was based on a novel, or a novella, from 1956. And the novella was about three, back then they were mutants, right? And they were just basically, which is how they featured it in Minority Report with Tom Cruise, is these people can, combined, they, with their three brains linked, they can see the future and predict crime. So they create the pre-crime unit, where they go out and arrest people before the crime's even been committed. And, that's, again, you got this algorithm in Captain America Winter Soldier, where it's like, I mean, we all don't trust the algorithm now, or we joke about, like, when you're doom scrolling on TikTok or Instagram, and it's like, this is what the algorithm's feeding me, and blah, 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 blah. And it's like, and then suddenly you get like something completely different, and you're like, why am I like, the other day I noticed it suddenly nobody sent me anything, nothing. It started feeding me like conspiracy theory and like dark videos of like haunting stuff. Like, look in the background. Did you see this? Right. And I'm just like, why did it even just suddenly pivot?
What did I watch that triggered that one?
Yeah. And it's like, but anyway, I mean,
well, some people think it can read your thoughts. I don't know that I buy that, but some people think your cell phone.
Only if you think out loud. Only if you think out loud, because
I'm not saying whether it's verifiable.
Yeah, the joke around people with me is like the phone's always listening. So like,
well, it is.
If somebody happens to talk about traveling to Iceland, and now all of a sudden I'm getting ads for Iceland travel.
Yeah, we know
things like that. Yeah,
we know that the phone listens, but some people actually think the phone knows what your thoughts are, because, and not for nothing, I don't really believe that the phones can read my mind, but at the same time, there have been times where I have not said a single word, and the phone started showing me things that I was interested in. And I was like, why is it showing me this? When I hadn't talked about it with anyone, hadn't said anything, hadn't even asked my phone about it. I asked my phone about a lot, but...
I did want to talk about kind of a gaping plot hole. I didn't catch it on my initial watch. Or any rewatch after this until my most recent one, is Nick Fury talks about the helicarriers, since we were kind of talking about the freedom versus safety point, and the helicarriers are the reason for that topic. Nick Fury mentions that Tony helped design the repulsor engines on these helicarriers. I thought it was kind of a plot hole, knowing that Tony is a genius. Why didn't he have a kill switch in those repulsor engines without S.H.I.E.L.D.'s knowledge? It's just something that bugged me when I was watching this. He would have done that as a character. He would have had a kill switch in place, because it's his proprietary technology. And
it's possible he did, but he wasn't there. So he didn't know about it.
But it doesn't matter. I mean, he would have known. I don't know. All the things we've seen from Tony this point forward, especially in Avengers 1, when he's like, I've been scanning everything since I got on the ship.
Yeah,
he would have known.
Secretly built it in. SHIELD wouldn't have known that he built it in there. Yeah.
He would have had a kill switch. I don't know. I thought it was a plot hole. It still made for an entertaining scene, but it just kind of.
I mean, I don't know, because if there was a kill switch, Tony wasn't there to turn it on. So, like, he wouldn't have known to use the kill switch.
But that's why I'm saying it's a plot hole.
Yeah. I mean, but you could kind of say that about almost every standalone movie. Why aren't the Avengers there?
Yeah.
We said that about we said that about Iron Man 3. And we could say that about this too. This was a world-changing event. I would think the Cap would have said, we need the Avengers.
Sure, but I don't know. He specifically says, Tony helped me design these engines. I just thought Tony would have.
See, I took that as a throwaway line in there, just to mention him,
Yeah.
Well, I didn't think about it until I saw the helicarriers rising in the air. I'm like, Tony probably would have just pressed a button and stopped it. But
but
Tony wasn't there.
It sounds like good.
It's a good what if episode.
Well, no, I was going to say, what is that YouTube one that they do the
how it should have ended?
How it should have, how it should have ended. Yeah, it would have been like, oh, done. Okay.
And how it should have ended, it would have been Steve going, hey, I heard you design these things. Can you just turn them off real quick? And then they all go,
Yeah, exactly.
And then that's it. It's over.
I think we glossed over a little bit the final fight between Bucky.
Yeah, we didn't really talk about the final fight yet.
That was pretty, it's a great final sequence, total team-up movie, final battle, and then Sebastian Stan's acting at the end when he's just wailing on Cap. You're my mission. Like, he's yelling. I'm like, wow, that was really good. Yeah. I still think it's very emotionally gripping to this day. And you feel the tension in the final battle, and you're like, are they actually going to be able to save the day this time? You don't know. So I don't know if anybody else has any thoughts on the final fight.
Definitely. It was devastating watching them fight, especially because right before the final battle, they did show us the scene, from before the super soldier serum when Steve and Bucky are at the front door talking, and he says, I've got, I'm with you to the end of the line or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we see them fighting, or I should say, the Winter Soldier is fighting and Cap is just taking it because he won't fight back.
He doesn't want to fight his friend. Yeah.
And he says, you're my friend. And Bucky says, you're my mission. And it was really gripping.
I'm with you to the end of the line.
Yeah. And then he falls in, and of course the Winter Soldier saves him. And we knew he would. I mean, I didn't think for a second that Cap was going to die in this movie, but it still is a great scene.
Mm-hmm.
And followed, of course, if you stayed for the end, after the end credits, seeing Bucky at the Smithsonian, reading his own biography, like he's
relearning himself.
Something,
he lost
something's
his identity.
going on. Yeah. So
Yeah.
the whole thing was very powerful. I loved it. And the destruction of the helicarriers was very, very satisfying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
the fact that they turned on themselves, that's the threat. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That was cool. It's like watching in Rogue One when they move the Star Destroyers and they attack each other. That's always a fun scene to watch. So
Rogue One,
the symbolism of it,
so good.
I love Rogue One.
So good.
Let's talk about Star Wars for another hour.
No.
Especially if you watch Joe.
I'm joking.
That notion of for purposes of discussion, the AI, trying to determine what the threats to humanity are, and then it being flipped on itself. The threat to humanity is the AI thing itself, the thing that's going to shoot everybody. So I thought that was that was satisfying.
Little Terminator vibes.
Yes. Yeah.
So, Captain America: The Winter Soldier. We already said it, but I'm going to ask it again. Captain America's best movie or Marvel's best movie? Heather, go.
I don't rank these things like you do, so I'm like the last person to ask. I think it was a very good movie. It was very exciting. It was different from prior superhero movies in that whole, the espionage fact and the more down to earth on the fighting. It wasn't just, rockets through the sky kind of fighting. It was people, and it was the stories about people. And, it was these harder questions of morality. So I think I just enjoyed this movie a lot, and it, for what it was. I don't rank things like you guys do. So you guys go ahead and do the rankings.
I said it at the top of the podcast. I think this is the best Captain America movie. I don't think that's ever going to change unless they release a 5th Captain America movie that's better somehow. I do think this is a top 3 MCU movie. I feel like this is how Iron Man 1 made me feel, which is why I have trouble ranking one over the other in my top 3. I feel like this is a really great movie. It's more grounded, kind of like Iron Man 1 was more grounded. And I would not call this Marvel's best movie. I think there's better Marvel movies than this one. But I do.
Other than Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah, there's better Marvel movies than.
What's a better Marvel movie?
Better than Infinity War? There isn't one.
No. I mean, better than. See, I can't include Infinity War and Endgame because those are culminations of all these other movies.
Sure.
So without Infinity War and Endgame. Wow. End War, Infinity End. Without those 2 movies, is this the best Marvel movie?
No, Iron Man 1. Better? I watch Iron Man 1 over this. And that's just me. This
is a close second.
Yeah. Without Infinity War, this is a close second. If we're talking just MCU, there's better Marvel movies than Iron Man 1.
What? Which one?
Spider-Man 2?
We're talking about.
I'm talking the entire Marvel compendium.
Yeah. Well, no, then you got to talk. The best hands down is Howard the Duck.
You're not wrong. No, I'm sure.
Okay, Bob, you go next.
I think Captain. I think again. I really can't. I know Infinity War and Endgame. I know I keep beating this up, but I know Infinity War and Endgame are part of it. I'm just saying that those are. More than just other Avengers movies, those are culminations of the entire MCU. So I think that this is, even to this day, this is arguably one of the best put together movies for all the reasons we talked about. Heather talking about the visceral action, the camera shooting, the soundtrack, the script, the maturity of this. I mean, this is more of the audience. This wasn't just Thor calling down lightning and shooting people and my friends, or whatever. I mean, there was, you had to think a little bit in this one. And this was definitely for, mature audience. And I don't mean like rated R or anything. It was just like, they really put a lot of trust into the audience that they were going to follow along with this one. And I really think that before and since they haven't explored anything that's been this well put together with any of their other characters. That's my opinion. So I mean, I definitely put this. I honestly, it's probably my favorite. It's my favorite out of all of them. I'm with Matthew where it's like Iron Man's hard to because it just that kicked it off, and that was just so different from anything. But I'm talking about as a well put together movie because we've talked about it so many different ways. And then I'll cut myself off. I know I can go diarrhea of the mouth here, but I think because you can take this movie and remove the Captain America part of it, that's really what makes it a good political action thriller movie, is because they focused on putting a good movie together and then bringing in the Captain America thing versus making that he's a super soldier and he has superpowers and all that other stuff, rather than making that kind of the first, or making sure that's always in your face. I mean, there was a lot. I mean, most of the movie, he's not even in the suit. He's driving in a truck with Black Widow, or they're doing this or they're doing that. Sure, he has his shield, but that in this movie, the shield, while identifying him as Captain America, to those of us who know, that was really just his weapon of choice.
I thought you were more than just the shield. Isn't that what the guy said in the beginning?
Yeah.
Right. And that it really becomes more of a tool, and it's kind of there and it helps him out. But I think that that's what I think makes this movie really the best one of any of the standalone movies. I've always thought that you can't compare any of the team up movies versus at least the Avengers one, Avengers, Age of Ultron, Infinity War, and Endgame, because they're just not. I mean,
they're a different level.
It's a different level, and it's a whole different thing, because you're like, that's why they're in phases. It's like phase 1, and then it culminates with this. Then you got phase 2, it culminates with this type of thing. And I think that, while that's not totally accurate, because phase 2 ends with Ant-Man, and Age of Ultron is kind of in the middle, but there's still culmination movies that it's like movie, and then boom, Avengers, and then movie, Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And then you get it from there. So sorry, I didn't mean to be so long-winded, but I think it's just a well-made movie, especially for a Marvel movie.
Yeah, I've never completely understood why they said the end of phase 2 was Ant-Man. It should have been Age of Ultron.
Well, it's like the end of phase 3 is what? No Way Home.
No Way Home, or not No Way Home.
Yeah.
Far From Home.
The end. Oh yeah, end of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that one at least makes a little more sense, because they said Far From Home is like an epilogue, but still, yeah, I get it. But yeah, for me, I do respect what you're saying. I do think that in many ways you shouldn't include the team up movies, because they're a completely different thing. But also for me, even though I go back and forth over this, I still think I choose this even over Infinity War and Endgame. I just absolutely think this movie is fantastic. And I mean, I've said that over and over again, so I'm not going to say it again, other than to wrap up what we're talking about.
You'll say it again, but that's okay.
I'll say it again, but not here on this podcast. I'm going to call you later, and I'm going to just pick up the phone, and I'm going to say, by the way, in case I didn't say it enough, I love Captain America the Winter Soldier. But then next week, I'll talk about how much I enjoyed Guardians of the Galaxy, because that is what we're talking about next week. It's a whole different direction, so I think that's going to be an interesting conversation. So before that, in the meantime, I want to thank Bob and Matthew and Heather and myself, because I'm awesome. And I'm glad that we were able to talk about this movie. And I want to thank our listeners for listening. Please hit like and subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, I forgot the line.
Tomorrow.
Make tomorrow better than yesterday.